Opinions are like snowflakes, you know what I'm saying? So, I'm on Sesame Street, walking around with all these monsters, Elmo and his buddies, a whole bunch of chickens, a whole bunch of penguins, and a number 4 dancing about. It was just pure joy, simple, ridiculous fun, stupid joy. There's no irony. Sesame Street is just a crazy great place to be. When you say something or sing something enough times, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's almost like casting spells. I don't mean necessarily in the flighty, I'm going to go buy a cloak with a hood now way. I live and die by puns. I was a bar back, which is the person who cleans the bathrooms at the end of a night in the bar, and a cook. I had kind of given up. I was into backing other people up. Music was something I just did on the side, and I don't think I had the energy to pimp myself out, like call people up and ask them to book me to play. I remember doing my mosaics or being in my little hiding place behind the couch snooping. I'd get bored sometimes, of course, but I think that's good for a kid, because it forces you to be creative. I'm a Canadian. Outside Canada, I carry the flag. Canadian nationalism isn't as insidious as American nationalism, though. It's good-natured. It's all about maple syrup, not war. You're an enormous sponge and everything goes in there, and you squeeze it out in songs, I guess. And if you're a painter, you squeeze them out onto a canvas. Gatekeeper was sort of my first attempt to put a little bit of a frame and boundaries around songwriting, and try to figure out a way to approach it that had a sort of end result in mind. I haven't written many like that. When I first played 1234, it was on stage in San Francisco at some kind of, sticky floor club. And it felt like a punk song. I mean, it's ridiculous to say that now, but it had that kind of, piercing straight melody. And then this fist-pumping ending, you know, that pada. Well, there's just some universal truths in a way that I've just observed to be true. You read Voltaire. You read modern literature. Anywhere you go, there's these observations about romantic love and what it does people, and these rotten feelings that rarely are people meaning to do that to each other. Something that I think I figured out slowly was, if you're playing a show and there's a chatter where there is, a lot of noise, people talking or something, I was never the one whose instinct was to try to be louder than them. I made the first Feist album in '98. So at that point, it was my nickname. It was as far as with my circle of friends, and just felt more accurate than 2 names. For me, music is in the choice of what not to play as much as in what you've chosen to play. You never know what's going to play into what's worthy of getting encapsulated into a song. I need therapy after writing. It's like leaking blood from a stone. It's brutally difficult, but worth it. There have been times I've planted stuff in songs where 4 years later I'll be singing it from a subconscious, kind of chameleon little lizard mind, and at a certain moment, all of a sudden, I'll hear a line from a different vantage point and it'll change its meaning. It's something I wrote, but it changed because I did. If you keep bashing your head against the same wall, at some point you're going to fall over and be still for a while. I get really scared about how the internet is shifting and changing everyone's minds, and the way we see ourselves and interact online. Everything is so diluted now. I once looked over the shoulder of a friend on Facebook, and it looked like hieroglyphs to me. There's merit online, of course, but social media gets super freaky. Imagine if 3 generations from now, people online have forgotten what date or day of the week it is. There's real potency in metal. Metal fans love metal as if it's a nation they would fight for. It's not diluted by pop culture. When I was in Beck's world, I felt like the little sister. I'm in the big brother's room with all his friends. You just hang out and keep your mouth shut so they don't realize you're there and kick you out. I like being in situations where I can be an underdog, where I can be in the corner and observe and soak it in. Commercialism isn't challenging creatively, it's only challenging in a stamina way. Metals has partly been about me regaining my self-respect, and I feel like I'm growing the muscles I want to grow again. After Sesame Street, it's a hyper-familiar world to me, and I have this childlike ability to ignore the fact that I'm talking to scraps of cloth. Every country I go to, I see posters promoting the film in different languages. Los Muppets, I love that. I guess I found it useful to realize that everything is true at once, you know? You can pull back and say, everything will be fine, but you can also be in a situation and say, not everything is going to be fine. When I wrote Mushaboom, I was living in the second verse, but I suddenly found myself in the first. As I get older, the present and the past shift and become the past and the future. A lot of it is a new awareness of time and life and the wheel of fortune crushing you and lifting you and crushing you and lifting you. Since I was 19, I've always gone where there was a reason to be. Maybe I'll be lucky and there'll be a reason to go somewhere tropical for a while. There's a crazy amount of goodwill, and I don't know where it came from, and I don't understand, but the more I pay attention to it, the more it's going to sting when it flips, so I think I'm almost subconsciously cultivating this naivety to it all. When I did 1, 2, 3, 4 on Sesame Street, they'd rewritten this song and made it about counting. At first, I balked. I was like, counting to 4? That's where we're going with this? Then they sent me appearances by other people like James Blunt doing You're Beautiful as my triangle. There's no mystery anymore. So my instinct is to show very little, because there's much too much information about everyone, everywhere right now. Reality TV is an example of that. Musically, I didn't relate to Berlin. There seemed to be a lot of machine music made there. I don't think I saw a stringed instrument in 2 years. I didn't really get London until I read Dickens. Then I was charmed to death by it. And of course, pop music is all about memorability and simplicity and positive messages and a little dash of joy. Any kind of anthemic song, for the most part, they're on the positive side of things. It's not hard to identify when a melody is just 1 degree too complicated or 1 degree too simple, and where that line of pop memorability lies. The group effort sound in recording of Sea Lion is like, you really hear all the people in the room and hear them interlocking. There's a real freight train energy of all these people at the same time playing. The idea of having one ensemble do everything is what was on Sea Lion, and that's what I tried to make happen for Metals, which is having 5 people in the room and all of us contributing equally to every arrangement and every song. There's nothing better than not knowing what's going to happen until you put the pieces together. Surreal can be exciting and good, and it can be like living inside an alien landscape, and it can be completely interesting, or you can be alienated from your own life inside your own life. It doesn't feel familiar anymore. Music is pretty intimate stuff, and I can only work with very few people, Gonzalez being one, Maki being another, and, on a completely different level, Broken Social Scene. With Broken Social Scene, it's not 1-on-1, it's a 1-on-12. It's very healthy, very comfortable, like a big potluck supper among old friends. On the videos for 1234 and My Moon My Man, I wanted to make the songs visible. And, really, what way can you make sound visible other than good old naive dancing? I was working with a choreographer, but I'm not a dancer. Any notion of elegance is impossible with me. I've not really spent much time in proper studios. The room itself where you're recording, and how you live while you're there is what appeals to me. I'd been touring for so long, 7 years. For a year and a half, I'd just been curious about what it was like not to tour. It's like if you were to lift a 100-pound barbell with your right arm for 7 years. Eventually you'd get really curious about what your left arm was capable of.